So in this talk, which is kind of a shorter talk, I just want to hit on briefly positioning all this notion of a creative age in a larger intellectual context and where it fits vis-a-vis current thinking in film or in literature or in various other expressions. So it's really kind of about how we think. And there is a lot of attention being given to the fact that in the 21st century, we just kind of think differently. Our brains work differently. And I think even we are rewiring our brains to operate in a slightly different way than maybe has been the case in the past. So that's the topic for this talk. So often in intellectual circles, this more recent notion of the way our brains work is seen as a contrast between modernism and postmodernism, a modern way of thinking and a postmodern way of thinking. Modernism being primarily, like most of the 20th century, and then at the end of the 20th century and into the 21st century, this notion of something really different happening, something that is postmodern, is after modernism. It's a rotten name. I wish they hadn't called it that, but that's still in common parlance. And this would be in many different disciplines. We think of modern thinking in science and postmodern thinking in science. We think of modern thinking in business and postmodern thinking in business. We think of modern thinking in filmmaking and postmodern thinking in filmmaking. And I want us to concentrate just a little bit in this talk on how that might fit into this investigation of a creative age. So let me give you a couple examples. So when television first began in the modern era, there was what's often called the classic era of television in 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and tons of television produced in that period. And it was the birth of a new media. And in that, it's very modern making or storytelling, I would say. So I can remember when I was a little kid, there was, and I don't know why, television has always been obsessed with crime. So there's always been crime dramas on television from the very beginning. So when I was a little kid, there was a show called Dragnet, and we watched Dragnet all the time. It was a super popular show. It was like the most popular show on TV. And there were only like about 5 characters in this show, and they were either really good or really bad. There wasn't much in between. And every episode, there would be a beginning and a middle and an end, a continuous narrative thread, and you could follow that very, very easily. And honestly now, if we look at a Dragnet episode, which I did a while back, it is so freaking boring. It is just very, very simple. It is a single narrative thread. Everything goes to one plot line. All of the characters stay in their role very, very tidily. And as you look at it and absorb it, you understand it way too easily. So that was modern television. And that actually went up through the 70s and 80s, where we were still getting very singular narratives in television. But now, television is very different than that. So if you just make the parallel with a crime drama, something like Breaking Bad, in any one episode of Breaking Bad, for one thing, in the whole kind of Breaking Bad panoply, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of characters, and they float in, they float out, and sometimes they're in that episode, sometimes they're not in that episode. There are many, many narrative streams that are going, and in one episode you might follow one for a little while and then whoops, switch over to another one. Way, way, way more complicated. I'm not a big Breaking Bad fan, so I can't talk in great detail about it. But I am a big West Wing fan, which was similar era. And West Wing, I would say, is very postmodern television, where again, it's a huge cast. There's a core of a few consistent people, but even they float in and out of different episodes. Any one episode is going to have 3 or 4 different stories that are being told, and you're getting a little bit of one and a little bit of another. But if you didn't see that episode 5 times ago, it may not make total sense. And if you're just sitting there watching it, you're being asked to assimilate all those things together. It's not telling you the story explicitly. You're having to make some leaps and make some associations with other things. And out of that comes this kind of jam up of storytelling and mixed narrative that happens. And honestly, our brains need that these days. We just, we get bored by anything too simple. And we just our brains require more complexity. And we're so good at sorting all of that out. And we can put it where it needs to be, and we get the overall impression. And maybe we miss a few things, but in some ways, we're kind of comfortable with that. It's more like real life. It's more like, walking out and experiencing something. It's not so fake and so orchestrated. So that's the difference between modern storytelling and postmodern storytelling. If we say take it in film, or let's say for a minute in literature. Their books for millennia had been written with a kind of continuous narrative and chronological generally. So we just follow the narrative chronologically. And there's millions and millions of novels that are written that way. And then in the postmodern era, oh my God, it's almost like no one does that anymore. You would never tell a continuous story chronologically. You do flashbacks and you do flash forwards and you do mix up time pretty thoroughly, and you leave it to the reader to put this all together. And maybe the ultimate of that would be something like Game of Thrones. And I read the whole freaking 5 books of Game of Thrones. And again, oh my God, 10,000 characters, and all of them with multi-syllable names that are hard to pronounce, and in geographies that are way up at the ice shelf and down on the tropical beach, and they're back and forth all the time, and the narratives and the stories are interwoven with each other, and you flash forward and you flash back, and that is postmodern literature. And again, it's challenging, and your brain has to really be on its toes to make all that work. But it's stimulating and exciting and very creative, and we're good at that. Nowadays, we can read that. Whereas actually, my mother-in-law was commenting on a TV show to me a while back, and she said, I have a hard time following that TV show. And she's an incredibly smart woman. This is not because she's not super intelligent, but her brain is wired for that simple continuous narrative. And if your brain isn't wired for this greater overlapping and complexity and experiential quality, it's kind of hard to follow sometimes. So it's in media like TV, it's in literature. One that I really love is, I love Richard Linklater as a filmmaker, but he did this crazy thing where he did a movie called Boyhood, where he filmed it over 12 years. And the actor, it's about a kid, and the actor goes from age 6 to age 18, and his parents and everybody else in it ages as well. And when they started that, they had no idea where it was going. They had no idea what this kid was going to be like. So Richard Linklater is writing this story on the fly as it develops according to the people that are growing and developing as human beings and as actors. It's a very postmodern, situational kind of reaction, and I love that film. It was out there and creative and interesting, and what studio would ever back something? You say, I'm going to take 12 years to do it, and maybe the actor is going to die. I don't know, but we'll figure it out. But that's the way that film was made. So I want us for a while to think, I want you to think individually about your own brain and the way it works and the way it thinks. And are you someone who thinks in a more modern way? And it's not that that went away. All that's still legitimate and valid. Or are you more a postmodern thinker? And we're going to have a bunch of word pairs. And we're going to be thinking of these kind of dichotomies. And does your mind work in a modern way or a postmodern way or somewhere in between? So this is a list of word pairs here. And on the left, we have a lot of word pairs that have to do with modern thinking. Modern thinking has order, it's rational, it's logical, it's always seeking, and especially, let's say, postmodern science, it's seeking truth. Einstein was a modern scientist, and he thought that there was a general field theory, and that if we could just discover it, everything would fit together perfectly. And then when along came black holes and things that were mysterious like that, he would say, no, it's all going to have a tidy resolution in the end. And he was very bothered by mathematical equations that had random number generators in them. Because he said, no, God doesn't roll the dice. It's going to be more about truth. That's modern science. It's about positivism, about idealization. It's about thinking of things as a whole. That episode is going to be a whole. We're going to complete it. There's a notion of utopia. We're going toward an ideal here. Very keen on objectivity, things that could be based in fact, especially in science, often hierarchical, certainly in business. There's the CEO, there's middle management, there's all us peons. The thing should be hierarchical. That's the way it should be. And that there should be domination of some people and some things. And very, very solidly committed to deductive reasoning. This is modern thinking. Postmodern thinking, yeah, not so much. Rather than order, postmodern thinking is interested in reality. And reality is messy sometimes. It's not so orderly. So that's fake. And we're more interested in reality than in some kind of superimposed order. We're interested in things that are political and moral and ethical. And that may not be rational. Our emotional side is not rational. And we now have invented, in a postmodern era, we invented the term EQ, not just IQ, but EQ, which is emotional intelligence. So things that are political and moral and ethical and emotional, those have validity right alongside rational. We're not just interested in logic, we're also interested in feeling. And feeling is maybe as important as logic, perception. We're not really truth. How many times do we really know truth? It's really more about knowing or cognition or believing that maybe truth is an ephemera. It's not reality. We're not so much interested in positivism as relativism. Something isn't always good, it's good in a certain situation. And then we're always thinking situationally. We don't so much believe in idealization, but more in skepticism. We're skeptical of things that are claimed to be perfect or ideal. Things don't come in wholes, they're more episodic. Our experience of the world is more episodic and piecemeal. it isn't holistic. So why, when we make a novel or we make a film, would we make it so holistic? The reality is more episodic. We're not so interested in utopias. Impossible. That's a dream. We're interested in everyday life, the kind of life we live every day and experience every day. And that's valid. That's important. We're not just interested in objectivity. We're interested in subjectivity. I bring some prejudices to this. I bring my own feelings and my own thinking to that. And that might be subjective. We're not very keen on hierarchy, much more interested in inclusiveness. Let's get everybody at the table. We don't just get the smartest person in the room dominating everything and winning the day. We need to get everyone's perception and inclusiveness there. We're not so interested in domination as we are egalitarianism, everyone having an equal input and say. And deductive reasoning is maybe less important than real experience. And what is our perception and experience of the world? So these are a list of modern words. These are a list of postmodern words. And what I'd ask you to do is it possible for you to think of where you fall on this continuum between modern and postmodern? So if you say that postmodern, if the extreme of all those words is a 10, and the extreme of all those words under modernism is a 1. So if you really believe in all those words under modernism, 100% you're a 1. If you really believe in all those words under postmodernism, 100% you're a 10. But maybe you're somewhere in between there. Maybe you're at a 5, and it's kind of, you have equal kind of investment in both sets of words. Or maybe you're a 3, you lean toward the modern words, but you can see some validity in those postmodern words. So I want you to think about that, and I want you to rate yourself. And then when we come to the check-in, we're going to have some discussion about where you fall on this continuum of thought between modern and postmodern thinking. Okay, see you.